Hey friends, it's Jessica from Three Rivers Homestead, and I'm back with another week in the life video where I just thought I would share with you updates on everything that's going on here on the homestead with the animals and the gardens and with the children and kitchen projects that we've been working on. So if you would like to learn more about our family, why don't you stick around? If you're new here, we are a family of 9. We live in Northwest Ohio. We have a small homestead and we homeschool. So let me show you what we were up to this week. So my first project for the week is going through our garlic that has been sitting in storage. This is garlic that we harvested in the summer of 2021, and we've been using it throughout the winter and really enjoying it. You can see some of it is looking a little rugged. It did not store very well. Some of it looks perfect and is still fine to kind of sit and be used for raw eating. But what I need to do today is go through and separate out any of the bulbs that are beginning to sprout and show kind of signs of like they're going to spoil if they don't get used soon. And so I'm just peeling garlic, separating out the cloves that still look good and the ones that need used. And we have some here in a bowl that I have decided I'm going to go ahead and puree down. I've got my food processor out. We're just going to throw these whole raw garlic cloves in it with some olive oil. And this is one of my favorite ways to preserve my garlic. I'll show you here after that comes out of the food processor. These little olive oil purees are perfect to freeze, and then whenever I need some garlic in a recipe, I can just pop out a frozen cube and throw that in my pan and it'll melt down and saute. I got this container. It's a ball canning freezer container, I guess, that's meant for freezing herbs, and it works great for this purpose. It has a little lid and it works wonderfully. So we got this project done to start the week, and now we're going to move on to other things. The kids wanted some smoothies, so I'm just starting with some homegrown blackberries and mulberries. In the bottom of my blender here, we added some kale that we needed to use up, and then I have homemade cashew milk. This is just blended cashews and water, some sunflower seed butter. We can't have peanut butter, so we use that instead. We have strawberries, some homegrown honey, some frozen bananas, and some freeze-dried raw homegrown liver powder. And we're going to add all this together. I eventually added also some chia seeds because that's another great addition, and I saw them on the pantry shelves and thought they would make a great addition to our smoothies here. We have smoothies typically about once a week. It's just a great way to use up some odds and ends, a good way to get some nutrition in the kids. I also ended up to this batch of smoothies adding some bone powder. It is a calcium supplement. Since we are a dairy-free family, not by choice, but by necessity, because my oldest son has a dairy allergy, calcium is something we have to really try hard to get into the children. And so the bone powder does that. Chia seeds have some calcium in them. We also do a lot of leafy greens and things, and then small fish with bones like sardines or anchovies. So however I can get that into the children, I do that. And so these smoothies kind of act as a multivitamin between the calcium powder that's in it and then the liver powder. They are getting a lot of nutrients in this snack. Now, I only add about 2 tablespoons of liver powder to that big blender because if you add much more than that, they will begin to taste it. So, but if it's 2 tablespoons or less, they don't even taste it, and it's just a great little snack for the children. Good way to get that stuff into the kids. Next, I thought I'd show you a really quick convenience meal. We had a night where I needed to make a meal quickly, so let me show you how I'm using up some jars. I have 3 pints of this homegrown, home-canned butternut squash, and I'm just going to dump those jars into my blender here, along with 1 quart of onion broth. This was beef broth that I canned with a whole onion in it, so it's a great base for many soups. Here I have some freeze-dried garlic scape powder. We're going to also add salt and pepper, and we're just going to put all of this stuff into the blender, and this is what it looks like here. We're going to make kind of a butternut squash soup. So on a night when I don't have a lot of time and energy to make a dinner, I just start emptying jars of my home canned goods into the blender and make something delicious. I also had this can of half-used canned pumpkin. David had used it to make some pumpkin biscotti the weekend before, and it was sitting in the fridge, so I figured we're just going to use this up too so that nothing goes to waste and add that to our butternut squash soup. So we've got it all mixed together here. It's nice and thick, and we're going to let it warm up on the stove, and this is going to make a delicious dinner for the children. Super easy. It took me about 10 minutes total to prep this, and everyone's going to love it. So that's how it looked after it was warmed up. I did bake some of my lazy bread, and I shared that recipe in a video a couple weeks ago. So we've got a salad, my lazy bread, and this really easy butternut squash soup, and this is what we had for our meal this night. A lot of people ask why I love canning so much, and the main reason is for convenience a lot of the times. As a busy mom, having stuff canned up that is already cooked through the canning process and just sitting shelf stable in a jar on the pantry shelf makes mealtime that much easier. And I know a lot of people ask, do your children ever not want to eat what you make? Well, the little boys weren't exactly excited about the butternut squash soup. It doesn't look that appealing. But thankfully, we have big brothers that can convince them to take a little bite of the soup with the bread kind of soaking it up. And once David did that to John ended up loving the soup and he ate his whole bowl. So big siblings are a blessing to encourage the little ones to eat. Very grateful for them. We had one day this week that was just gorgeous weather. It was 70 degrees and sunny and just a taste of what's to come as we approach summertime. It's been very inconsistent, the weather here in Ohio. We've had days like this, and we've had days where a couple nights later it got down to 29 degrees overnight. So we're just cherishing these sunny days while we have them. I allowed Gracie to pick a little bouquet, but I said, make sure you save some of those dandelions for the bees, because that's the first food that the bees get. Now I'm going to show you my radish selections. It was time to get our radishes in the raised beds, and these are what I am planting here for our first planting. Radishes are a super easy crop to grow. I always say if you want to feel very successful as a gardener, grow some radishes because they germinate very quickly. They only take maybe 3 to 5 days to germinate from the soil, and then they only take maybe 4 weeks at the most before they're ready to harvest them. So if you want a quick treat that makes you feel super successful as a gardener, sow some radishes. But now is a great time. We are about a month out from our last frost date. So I can plant these radishes right now and I can get a harvest of them before these beds are ready to be planted with some summer crops like tomatoes or peppers or things that can't handle the cold weather. So instead of wasting this space in the raised beds just sitting here with nothing in it, I can actually plant some of these radishes and then I can have a harvest of them just in time then to have the soil freed up for other crops. So we love radishes. We will eat them raw in salads. If I have extras, I can them pickled and they make a great addition to a meal spread. We also planted carrots this day, and here are the varieties that we're planting this year. Carrots are something much like radishes that I plant in succession, so this won't be my only planting of carrots this year. I start now, and then every couple of weeks I'll plant a few more batches somewhere else, and then that will give me carrots throughout the year and not just a bunch at one time. So just marking my rows. It makes me laugh because Adam would actually get out a ruler and he would measure out these rows and make sure they're perfectly spaced. I tend to be much less type A, much more type B, and so this is why Adam doesn't like to garden with me. He does not like my crooked rows, but you know what? We all have our strengths, and having straight rows is not mine. I just figure get the seeds in the ground. The plants don't really care if the rows are straight, and in the end, I just want to grow some food. So anyways, putting a few more radishes here by my peas that I had just planted. I'm waiting for those peas to come up. And then I'm just sticking radishes in the edges of some beds because, like I said, by the time I harvest these, they'll get out of the way and then it'll be time to put my beans and okra and other plants that will be sown in the middle of May in place of them. So it's fun to get my hands in the dirt right now. It feels so good to start filling these beds. Now let me show you how my winter sown jugs here are doing. You can see my kale here is looking lovely. Now is the time that I need to remove the tops of these. I don't want these plants to fry. And so what I'm doing is taking the tape off and opening them. And pretty soon here we will be thinning these out and transplanting them into their garden bed space. But as you can see, the kids sowed quite a few seeds in here, a lot more than we needed. So I will have some fun thinning these out and transplanting them. In the meantime, while I was in the garden, the children were out playing. The forsythia is in bloom and it is just gorgeous. And the children are enjoying making their bouquets. I often get wildflower, dandelion bouquets, forsythia, anything the kids can find, and they will bring them to me. And we have little jars of bouquets all over the kitchen counter. I love it. The next project for this day was working on my summer kitchen. I mentioned this in another video that this has been a dream of mine for quite a while. And my good friend Ruth Ann Zimmerman from Instagram finally convinced me to get my summer kitchen going this year so that I can do my canning outdoors. If you're not following Ruth Ann, I'm going to link her Instagram and her YouTube channels here in the description. You've got to check her out. But anyways, what I wanted in my summer kitchen was a 3-burner camp stove so that I can do my canning outside. You may have noticed that I have a glass top stove in my house, and a glass top stove is not ideal for canning. I do have good success canning on it, but I can only do one batch at a time, which if you're someone like me who really does a lot of canning, that wastes a lot of time. So with this 3-burner camp stove, I can do more than one batch at a time, and it's going to save me so much time. It's also going to keep the heat and the mess outside this year, so I am extremely excited about that. Our home isn't exactly large for a family of 9. We have about 1,600 square feet. So in the summer, we like to be outside as much as possible. The house can feel a little cramped, and we're kind of sick of being cooped up indoors over the winter. So in the summer, we just live outside. And so I figured, why not just move my kitchen outdoors? And I can be out here kind of monitoring the children while they're playing and everything else that's going on in the summer months. Instead of having to be inside the house while I'm preparing meals, I can just be out here with the rest of the family. So in order to set up my summer kitchen, I needed obviously the propane stove. I also needed a nice place for meal prep. And so that's what Gabe's putting together here. I got this cart off Amazon. I'll link all of this in the description. But this cart has a stainless steel top and it has storage underneath it. So it's a place that I can prep my meals. And then as you can see right here, for the top of the camp stove, I also got a cast iron griddle. This will allow me to cook breakfasts like pancakes, bacon, eggs, things like that. And I think it's just going to be a huge blessing to our family and make mealtime a lot more fun and easy for me in the summer months. We do not have central air in our house, so any heat from cooking and canning that I can keep outside just makes things that much more comfortable inside. So here is the beginning of the summer kitchen. I'm so excited. So as I mentioned, I'll link everything, but we've got the griddle, we've got the stove underneath, and then over here we have some storage and then a prep area on the table. Behind that area is the grill. That's where we have a charcoal grill. And so now when Adam's grilling, I can be prepping the other food outside with him instead of having to be inside. That'll be really fun for us. And then I had to make sure to get a cover for the griddle so that that doesn't rust. But as you can see, this is all right off of our kitchen on our back deck. It needs quite a bit of cleaning after the winter. We need to wash the siding and power wash everything, but we'll get to that here soon. But we have a picnic table so we can eat and keep the mess for meals out here. The chairs over here, we do a lot of our homeschooling outside here, and then the little boys play outside while we're doing that. So this is just an area that we love to spend time in this summer, and I'm so excited to be able to cook out here. I think we're really going to enjoy this year. Now, speaking of cooking, let's head back inside and I'll show you what David's project was for this week. He decided to try making soft pretzels this week as part of his homeschool baking curriculum. So I will share the recipe that he used in the description. and he basically just picked a recipe online that looked good and then adapted it to make it dairy-free and tried it out. And not all recipes are a winner, and so this is a learning experience for him. I don't think he thoroughly enjoyed the results of this recipe, but he did learn a lot, and then next time he makes pretzels, I think that they will turn out even better. So this was 100% him. I did not help him at all. So I'm really proud of how his results turned out. You guys will see in a minute, but they weren't exactly what he wanted. So I'm not sure that he will use this exact recipe again. I think he will tweak it a little bit in the future. David is still trying to find his niche in baking. All he knows is that he really loves baking. He particularly loves making sweets, but he hasn't figured out exactly what his favorite things are to make. He loves making biscotti, he loves baking cakes, he loves making cookies, and at this point, I'm just encouraging him to try as many new recipes as possible. He, for school, has to try something new every week, and then in that, you just never know where he will find what his niche will be and what he will be doing as a baker in the future for the rest of his life, if that's the path he chooses. He's dunking his little pretzels in a baking soda solution because that was what the recipe had asked him to do. So that was something that was new for him. And this was a fun one. Making pretzels is fun. It was neat for him to form his shapes, and I enjoyed just sitting there watching him learn and be in his element. Just a neat day with my boy. And then, of course, soft pretzels, you have to have a coarse salt for the top of it. And so I had to dig into storage and find my coarse pink Himalayan salt bucket, and I pulled some out, and then we need to grind that down because those are really big pieces of salt, a little too big for the pretzels. So thankfully I had this in storage, and he could grind it down with the mortar and pestle to the perfect consistency for his pretzels. And then every soft pretzel needs something to dip it in. We had mustard, but we decided to also make some cheese sauce. So I had just a little bit of butternut squash left over from the night before. And you guys know me, I don't want anything to go to waste. So I figured I think I can turn this butternut squash soup into some kind of dairy-free cheese for dipping. And so we took the butternut squash soup and I added nutritional yeast, and I added quite a bit. What I showed you here, I probably doubled that by the time I was done. If you're not familiar with nutritional yeast, it is something that you can add to food for kind of like a fake cheese flavor. It definitely has that cheese-like kind of taste. It's not, I'm trying to explain it. I guess it would be cheddary would be the best description of it. And so if you add that in and kind of let it melt into that, it made a cheese sauce that was good enough for us. You know, we haven't had a nacho cheese sauce in a while, so the kids were definitely able to use this and dip their pretzels in, and this was a fun little snack that we had that day. So I was happy to use up that soup and not have it go to waste. Now, his pretzels did not brown on top as much as he wanted to. He had to take them out of the oven because the bottom was burning. So he doesn't know if it's the recipe or if he needs to change the baking times in the future, but that is why he said he will not use this exact recipe again. So we will see what happens the next time he makes them. I can't have the pretzels, unfortunately, because I can't have wheat. So I'm just having some rice cakes and dipping that in the cheese sauce, and that was a tasty snack for me. On to the next project, we are going to plant some loofah seed. This is seed from my friends at Provision Farm, and loofah is a squash. It's kind of in the squash gourd family. And if you don't know that these loofahs are actually a vegetable plant, we're going to plant 3 of them this year. And this is what they look like. They're actually a green squash on the plant, and when you dry them out and peel them off, the inside of the squash is that beautiful loofah sponge. And so I haven't grown these for a couple years. I usually grow them every other year. So if I grow enough in a year, then I don't need to grow them again for a couple years. But you can cut them up and they make perfect little dish scrubbers that can be composted when you're all done with them. No need to buy plastic dish scrubbers. You can hang them up and they can be a loofah scrubber for the shower and things like that. And one of my favorite ways to use them is when I make my homemade soap. I throw a little cutting of the loofah in there, and it makes a great exfoliating kind of scrubby soap that's just perfect for when you really need to get a deep cleaning. So I love growing loofah. And what's wonderful about loofah is that if you grow it and harvest it when it's immature, you can have these little plants that taste like zucchini, or you can let them go and you'll have your loofah sponges. So I'm getting some started now. And speaking of plant starts, let me show you what it looks like under my grow light. So some of my pepper plants there look beautiful. Some of them are looking a little rugged, like these things need more than what the indoor lights or the soil in the cups is providing. Thankfully, here next week, I'm going to start moving these outside and we're going to begin hardening off our peppers and tomatoes. Hardening off is the process where you take your indoor plant starts and you slowly introduce them to the elements that are outside. You can't just take these little seedlings that have been babied with the indoor air and the indoor light and stick them out in the harsh sunlight with the wind and everything out there, or they will fry and wither. So you take them outside and you slowly add them maybe an hour of sunlight, partial sunlight, maybe in the shade the first day. The next day you up it a little longer, and then finally after a week or so they might be ready to stay outside for the majority of the day. You can see my parsley down here is doing well. Still waiting on my rosemary to germinate. I don't know how that's going to go. I've got my onions here that hopefully I can transplant into the garden in the next week or so. And we are just ready for garden season. Now it's time to update you on how the incubator chicks are doing. Last week I showed you what it looked like when you candle them at 7 days. Now I'm candling them at 14 days. And you can see that little baby chick that just a week ago was a tiny little dot is now filling up over half of the egg. You can see the veins, and if you look really closely, you can see movement there, moving around. And this is just miraculous to me to see, how God has these little creatures developing in an egg. I just feel so blessed that I get to experience this. And so I candle them, like I said, at 7 days. I candle them at 14 days, and then around 18 days of incubation, we will lock this down, this incubator, and we will not touch them again until they hatch around 21 days. It takes 3 weeks for baby chicks to hatch from their eggs, so I will show you that next week. Now, last week I showed you eggs that I had thought were not fertilized. Sometimes it's hard to tell if the egg has a really dark shell, and you can second guess yourself, especially early on when you're only at maybe 7 days. But by the time you get to 14 days, when you have an egg that looks like this when you're candling it, you know that there is nothing that was growing in there. So I can safely crack this egg open and investigate. So that's what we're going to do. Sometimes when you crack these open, you will see that the chick had started to grow and then stopped developing for whatever reason. It's much like with humans. There's no explanation. There's probably just a problem. Sometimes the eggs just were not fertilized at all. The rooster didn't have a chance to fertilize those. I can see that these 3 eggs look like they came from the same exact hen. So I don't know if it's a problem of her not allowing the eggs to be fertilized or something like that, but I typically do not have this poor of a fertilization rate in my eggs, so I'm trying to figure out what is going on. So I cracked open all 6 of these eggs that were not, did not have anything growing in them, and none of them appeared to have an embryo forming or anything like that. So apparently our roosters are just doing a very poor job of mating with the hens and fertilizing these eggs. So I need to see what's going on out there. Last year, well, for the last 4 years, we had the same group of 3 original roosters that we had in our flock, and 2 of them passed away last fall and over the winter. They were just old, and it was their time. And with those roosters, we always had perfect fertilization rates, great hatch rates. And now I'm finding that without them there, it looks like my young roosters that are taking their place are not getting the job done. So we will have to see. We still have 16 chicks forming in the incubator, and hopefully all 16 will hatch out, and I will share that with you next week. In the meantime, friends, I'm just resting a little bit, taking a nap with my sweet baby boy, cherishing these years where he's little. I hope that you guys are having a wonderful weekend celebrating the resurrection of our Savior Jesus Christ. And I hope your family is blessed with an opportunity to also get some rest this weekend. So I will see you next week, friends. Have a good week. Bye.